Waves of French fleeing back have stacked on top of many of the French units. Those units can't move for this turn. Once the fugitives pass them by, they'll not be stopped anymore. In addition, what do we have here? There are a couple that are free, though. And what's kind of funny is because you know where the fugitives are going to move after the first turn, you can kind of do a geometric puzzling and figure out where it's safe to go. You can't move a whole line that way, but when you got a unit or two, you can probably cause an engagement. Now, I'm only going to be moving 3 hexes forward, so nobody's going to quite, well, this guy might, 1, 2, 3, yeah, we're going to be able to hit those Oxford archers, and they're not going to be happy about that, I fear, because they're not ready. They're neither behind their stakes, nor are they armed with their bows. In fact, there's almost no bows available, so they're in trouble. But the other thing is, the English, by grabbing some of those fugitives, have reduced the effect of the press backwards. So there may have been a mistake in moving forward so aggressively, in addition to the obvious one of this poor fella who's going to be in trouble. Having those pesky archers firing definitely improved at least the amount of time spent on the movement side of this little turn for the French. It took almost no effort at all. Now, I could have moved this third line forward, but again, I want to wait until things look a little clearer. They're never going to be completely clear because the fugitives move so slowly. I've only got so much game to actually engage there. But you begin to see then why it takes so long. That third line took a long time to come forward. They basically did allow for the field to clear somewhat. What I'm looking up right now is the morale checks. Okay. Because I'm worried okay. So the units that got hit by the fugitives have to make a morale check too, as well as the units that moved. Okay. And the effect of facing this route is much, much heavier than the effect of anything that the arrows themselves could do to these armored men. What we were seeing with the archery was, there'd be a hit here or there. Once they got to close range, there was a pretty good chance of doing a hit or two. But just walking through this mass that's charging back, I mean, you can imagine the psychological impact of that. And I think this game does a very interesting job of modeling a route. Every other game that I've seen kind of says, either throws in the towel and says, hey, you're routed, you're off the battlefield, or it kind of just has whole units either disappearing off the board or running in a routed state where they might have an effect on them. But this, with the slow disintegration of the units, with all those stragglers or whatever, the fugitives running back, the particular nature of this battle really allows you to highlight that one instance. It's about the only thing this game really highlights is the tremendous effect of breaking a unit and what the effect of the men running away from it is going to be. I think I didn't roll this guy. I have no idea. Send him off that way. The melee itself only had a 50% chance of hurting these Oxford guys. That's including the big, +7 attack bonus. And next turn, we're going to be down to a 14% chance of hurting them. Melee is so inconsequential in this game. It's really amazing. But when you look again at the English casualties, it had to be pretty inconsequential. The high end is probably, maybe a couple hundred casualties. The low end, well, the low reports are lower than the number of known nobles who died at the battle. So that's on the ridiculous side. But it's probably about 100 men died here for the English and several thousand for the French, with the rest probably just fleeing. Given the relative ineffectual nature of the bow fire, I am pretty much standing back trying to let these fugitives get by. Passing through the wave of fugitives has just destroyed the second rank, the second battle attack. And now they're hitting, that's not a unit, they're hitting a couple of the units, Henry, Cambois, and of course these Oxford archers, who I can't, actually I could. They collected up ammo last turn, but they didn't get a chance to do so again. I could actually launch a fire with them. There's no reason. They can't move out of the hex, but they can possibly do some damage with arrows. But the rest of the locations were being hindered, too much by the fugitives. Now, it looks like the waves are slowing down over here, but we are going to get hit with another wave of them and stopped again before we can strike in here. The problem here is these things aren't big enough to actually melee. Now, they have the +7 bonus, so they actually have some chance of doing something, but not much. And then they're going to be locked into combat where they're at the disadvantage because of the leader present. I just don't have enough French leaders that'll give a modifier. Most of them are over here. There's just not enough left, and that's kind of the problem with this third wave. If you could control the pace of the French moving forward, you might be able to do quite a bit of damage to the English, but the English army is just significantly better, as well as having, the advantages of the archery fire and whatnot. All right. Well, I guess I should take care of this fire. It's not going to be too impressive. I'll just do it right now. That's a longbow at range 1. I've got only 2 arrows there. I could have picked up more. And a 37 isn't going to get a hit. I need at least a... It's kind of weird because you don't want the lowest number possible. You want the highest number possible that you could still hit with. That works kind of like my old role-playing game, actually. Pendragon, which I just picked up a copy of somewhere down here. The old Pendragon. I didn't really like the newer version of it. Anyway, we'll go to the I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Oh, we got to make all the morale checks. It's kind of painful, but humorous at the same time. This sequence seems to be the French move forward, get stuck behind some stuff, lose some units to attrition, and they lost Barr's command now. He's under here now. Another leader gone. So the forces just dissolve as they come up. Once they hit into combat, they have a 1 round where they have some chance of doing something. Now, in these cases, the English are going to have the attack advantage now. Just because they're bigger with the leaders than the French units are. But even over here, I've got some chance of doing damage right now. Very, very limited. We're talking about a 2-point difference on there. We got I think a 14% chance. If it's third line, it's 6%. I don't remember if Oxford's damaged. No, Oxford's not damaged. So I've got some decent chance of causing damage. No morale possibility of a loss for the English anywhere. They just they don't have anything that gives them a point of morale against them. And not really much is happening. Now, these Oxford archers are holding off the French men-at-arms. At some point or another, I'll be able to collect up. I mean, they can grab arrows during their turn, but at some point or another, maybe the Yorkists will be able to move up. Maybe these guys look like they're in position, actually. But they're still carrying their stakes. They'd like to get on top of some French dead so that they can grab stuff. That's the Huntington archers, who are also out of supply. So they're actually walking around with their stakes, looking for a place. And there are plenty of places where they can just set up and provide possible fire support at some point. But it just does not look pleasant for the French at all. Well, no actual success in the battles coming from either Henry or Camois. However, hitting them forces them to take a morale check defensively, and they've got so many routing units around them, etc. This one disintegrated, this one mostly down there. It's just falling apart. You can see there's almost nothing left of this second line. I haven't fired a single arrow at them, I think. Well, yes, I have. I fired a couple here and a couple. But, they did not face the mass archery that the initial ranks faced. The thing the archery does is it starts the thing snowballing. It will cause some fugitives. Those fugitives and those dead will cause some effective morale checks that start causing more fugitives. And that's how this whole wave ends up beginning. You get the feeling that you could not translate this game, the system of this game, into much else than a pure rout, because so much of the game seems to be focused on making the rout into this snowballing occurrence. And that's kind of sad to me. I want something more general that covers the rout, but also covers the possibility of a rout not being complete, of it stopping, of a fight, of troops being able to advance without routing. And this game is not going to present that view. Other games at a higher level of abstraction, at least of the routing technique, mechanics, are going to do a much better job. Well, no harm came from not having any archers available with bows, with arrows ready. All that scavenging worked fine. The entire French second line has dissolved now, except for one unit, which didn't have to make a morale check because it's not strong enough to attack. Now, it'll get attacked next round and have to make a morale check on the English side of the phase. I see no point in attacking with these guys moving through the third line. We'll see what they do to it. And the artillery is available during the English move this time. Whee! Cannon, of course, had no effect. The only thing that really had an effect was the fatigue roll for Camois' unit. It's beginning to disintegrate. It's down to just one line left. As you lose pieces, even though that reduces the chances of losing more pieces, you're spewing off little points that are helping draw you away. Once those refugees leave your general area, then you're actually a somewhat sturdier unit. But when we counted everything up, including the total damage that it had already taken, it actually does become quite easy to dissolve if you're a weak force. So there is a factor in there like a unit becoming wrecked in the CWB games. Just in the sense of this, hey, if you've taken 4 more lines, you're down 10 points. Individual units don't have individual morale, except as expressed overall by the fact that the French smaller units are using the more likely to disperse columns, and the French larger units use those early on, and as they go later, they have the less likely. I don't really know what to do here with the French. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to count the points at this point because I'm not sure. You know, if this is not feasible, I don't see running through the tedium of moving another line up here. I just, it's not my idea of fun. It's an interesting system. It's an interesting design to look at. It's got to be a dead end, though, because it's just, you know, it's just too mechanically annoying. Now, there are things you could do to streamline it, but those would probably be things that bring it into line with, hey, something else that I found too mechanically obnoxious, the Battles of the Age of Reason, which I'll get back to someday. Let me just look at the points and see if there's any purpose to this. Oh crap. Somewhere along turn 5 I was supposed to make an army morale check for the two sides here. Which would be total French army casualties, which really haven't increased that much. We're looking at 27. The number roll is equal or less, the entire army breaks. That's going to be a percentile die check. We can say that they succeeded in passing that. Same for the English, who have taken only 2 casualties. Well, that couldn't possibly break them. The army as a whole isn't willing to give up, which is more to their own fault. All right, what about the victory points? Well, the victory points are actually kind of impressive. Each step loss for the English is worth 7. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wow, they got chewed up. 8. Looks to me like I've got 8 step losses. 8 sevens is a number I can never remember, but it's 56. Nothing was captured. So that's all we've got for the French. Now for the English, it's on the other set. 1 for each casualty point, 1 for each ransom level, and 1 for each French fugitive. Okay, well, casualty points is 27, 34, 50, 58. It looks not that far apart, actually. 65. Looks like 71 points. That's not quite the 2-to-1, but you know, this scenario actually gives the French so many points for each casualty they produce. It's just they're not expected to win this battle. I guess maybe I'll keep going. The other one drops it if the French can free deploy and kind of control their movement forward a little bit more. The French only get 4 points for each thing they kind of do. And then King Harry's Folly drops it to 2 points and keeps the English at pretty much the same side, except the English want to advance off the map and actually push their way towards Calais in this one, in that one. Yeah, I guess I'll keep going. I'm not sure what the value is. Finish up turn 9, and we've only been fighting for 25 minutes about in battle times. Yet we've got this much effect. In fact, this is putting the French in an interesting position because the English are running out, chasing the fugitives, hunting them down, grabbing them, getting the piles bigger. That's great. They're also, some are still scattered, gathering arrows. I've got a complete line that you want to send forward at this point, thinking, wow, they're really disorganized. The problem is this mass. I've seen what happens when I try to push through that. I might be able to get some movement down here on one flank, but everywhere else there's just so many refugees, so many fugitives running. I think I've just got to let them go by, and there's going to be a lot of turns where not much is happening. One problem for the English, though, is this Camois unit, like the French after they get hosed marching through the fugitives. This thing's down to, oh, so's Gloucester. I should have checked him too. That's an archer though. That doesn't reduce his danger, but if he moved, I gotta find him and roll a morale check. Camois is over here though, and basically he's getting this this 5-point morale check automatically, which gives him a 30% chance of just disintegrating. Any turn he moves, any turn that something happens to trigger the morale check. Now, movement is one of the few things that combat will. So by running around chasing the refugees, the fugitives, he's actually making it less likely that he'll be an effective piece there. I probably ought to find a place to settle him down. The problem is I haven't decided where my line is going to be. If the French don't attack, do I want to push forward and try using arrows on them to, I don't know. They're not forced to attack at this point. Or do I want to just kind of settle down my stakes where the piles of dead are accumulated, so that if I do fire off a bunch of arrows, I have some opportunity to reload from the dead bodies? I think probably the latter, and that means pulling back with, say Henry here and Camois to try to form something that's like a line again, just to improve my chances of when the French come. It's so hard to tell what to do though when, the whole board is just filled with masses of white stuff. It's hard to figure out what's mine, what's not, and everything like that. I found Gloucester. He's down here. Now, he had picked up his stakes and I was planning on moving him. Instead I'm just going to leave the stakes where they are, and he's just going to stand there, because at the very least he gets some archery fire at any French that come in. But if he tries moving, there's a 30% chance he'll just disappear. Looks to me like I've got a lot of turns ahead of me as these start to straggle through, to let them get by and see what happens. Meanwhile, the English are almost completely recharged in terms of ammunition. The difficulty is I can't move someone like Camois here. He's in his final position. I could shift some of the archers up forward to give him some additional protection, and I may be doing that with some of these. Otherwise, though, the English position's a lot less sturdy than it once was. Before, there were limited gaps between the units. Now, it's more of a straggled affair. I've got a couple of units like York or Henry that I can position in good locations still to try to create some semblance of a line that will actually prevent the French from just being able to march right through. I'm not sure what it means if they march right through, because they're not allowed to change facing until they destroy an English unit, and so far that's not happened. So if there's no English units behind here, well, they can run back and capture, some of these fugitives who obviously move significantly slower for whatever reason than the actual units. But not much else I can say about them, to tell you the truth, because they'll just be marching this way. They'll march right through, which seems a little ahistorical, or unrealistic, at least to me. Packed together hordes, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're sweeping through and removing units. This cav got disintegrated by these guys just coming through. The effect of so many routers in one clump is just going to disintegrate everything. I removed a few from the board back here. I can get rid of this guy. He's not going to have an effect. Just to give me countermix in part and remove some of the clutter. But honestly, I just don't see even a viable attack being launched here. I passed turn 10 a while back. Didn't check morale there. We're not in terribly. Well, let's make a check for once. You know, it doesn't do a damn thing. We're at. It looks like only 27 casualties. Which, yeah, that's enough to rout the French. You know, so the units with leaders are able to stay on the board. And that's most of them. But the rest are going to turn and flee. I'm just going to call this here. I mean, it's just a matter of proceeding with a mechanical task at this point. I can't see one or two of these making it up. Really, it's only what's on this front, because everything else is getting hit. Well, this guy just took his wave. I was going to say everything else is getting hit with units anyhow, and I don't have the room to maneuver to get out of their way. These fugitives, just as they run through your unit, you know, I don't know which way that guy's facing. I guess that way. This guy looks like he's not going to get another one either. So, I mean, if you wait them out, they don't go. But otherwise, since I failed that morale check, I feel compelled, and the English did not fail theirs, I feel compelled to leave the battle with a couple of these units. Which would mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's get Bar off the map. This would, of course, be happening during the normal impulses, but this didn't have a leader. And it wouldn't have straggled the way it did given that, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, this is all I have is 3 units, one of which is going to get swept aside very quickly. So I'm going to call this sucker. I don't see much point to wasting my time and your time if you're watching it. It really doesn't look to me like there's a whole hell of a lot that you can do in this. But that does in the historical scenario. In the other scenarios, you could certainly play them out, but they're still so hugely tedious. I'm not sure anyone in their right mind would really want to face this many times. All right, I'm going to send this up, and I guess I'll do a review of it.